Kia ora, welcome to another page that I'm going to create using the No Worries range from Close to My Heart. I'm actually going to start with the paper that has all the shapes that you can cut out to create pocket page items, and I'm actually going to use this as the foundation for my layout. I'm going to do a bit of layering using a black and white photo of my daughter that I took while we were doing a road trip through from Queenstown to Dunedin a few weeks ago. And so the papers that I'm cutting up are ones that I've used from other pages or in the cardstock and bits and pieces to actually just give it a bit of strength, a bit of structure, and to add some interest behind the page, because the squares or the oblongs that are already on this page that I'm using do add interest, but I just wanted to add a little bit of dimension or a little bit of depth. And these layers added to that and created the dimension that I was going for. So I'm saving some of the zip strips as well because I'll use these later on my page. The complements that come with the No Worries pack have lots of trees and circles and shapes, and there's some quite cool craft cardstock type pieces that I'll be using in this page as well. So here I'm going to have a look at the word smile. My daughter had a big grin on her face as we did this road trip. Quite happy that she was driving the whole family in the ute through some of these interesting roads. There's a few gorges and things that we have to drive through on this trip. And she managed successfully. We all got there safely. It did take a little bit longer, but that was good that she was adding caution into the mix. So by cutting around the stickers, I'm able to place them and see if I want to keep them there or not. I found that it's quite handy that these complements packs come in little Ziploc bags, because I'm able to put the pieces that I've cut and haven't used back in the bag that I can use on another page later on. Although I may start with a photo and a paper, I never really have any strong, clear ideas about where a page is going to go or what it will look like. I don't follow a sketch or other things. I've been interested lately listening to recordings of other people and their process behind what they do to create a page. Some are very structured, very organised, following a sketch or a plan, and others have a more laissez-faire type arrangement as I do. The learner driver lettering that I'm using here is some that I cut out on the Cricut. I did have to stop recording to do that because I use my phone with the Design Studio app more so than a computer. So I had to pause that to do that process to create the letters I wanted to use and to send them to my Cricut Explorer before I cut them, and then was able to put the phone back in the tripod to record this video. So just adhering these down, they were quite fiddly to stick down, but it was good that I was able to play around with placement and where these letters would actually go and suit this page. So getting the letters, just playing around here with the layering, getting that all stuck down. Just placing the bits and pieces, and I started with the bottom one, and then I realized that actually I'm going to start with the top and work my way down, because that way I'll know, and just making sure I'm putting the glue type stuff in the place that I want it across each layer, so that there can sort of be peaky bits coming through from the other papers that you can see, but that they don't take over from the page or the paper. Okay, so I used the fine tip glue here to get these down, and this worked reasonably successfully. I find that I do have to make sure it's quite wet while I still stick it down, and then just have a little bit of pressure on the letter as it goes down to get a really good strong bond between the letter and the paper underneath. This is, I think, the Flower Market cartridge that I've used here for this writing. It's sort of a little bit more floral or a bit more classic, and in some ways I wanted to tie that in with the black and white photograph that I was using, rather than it being a more modern font like I've used for some of them. The whimsical feel of this No Worries range kind of suits the lettering, I think. The natural, easygoing. And getting the last of these letters stuck down. I just, as I was putting the lid on there, it's quite important that even, but if you're sort of not going to use it for a minute or 30 seconds or so, to put the lid back on, because sometimes the nib of the pen can dry up if it doesn't have the lid on it, which to get it does get started again, but it just takes a little bit of time sometimes when you're right in the middle of doing something important. So finding more of these little complement stickers and shapes that seem to fit with this page and cutting around them to see how they'll look on the page before actually sticking them down. I chose these sort of cut out arrows because they related to the act of driving and going in a direction and heading somewhere. And every page needs a love heart, doesn't it? So as I'm thinking about the process of actually creating a page and what people go through, I'm interested in finding out how you create your pages. So do you have an idea in your head? Do you start from the photograph? Do you start from the paper? Do you start from the story? What's the driving force, or what's the thing that starts you off on this process of putting together a page, whether it's to preserve a memory or whether it's the actual process of making a page that you do it for? The zip strips that come on these papers are super handy for all sorts of things. Here I'm doing it right across the layout. At times I might just tuck it under a photo or go halfway across. But here I was just sort of defining an area behind it. And by having used the kind of the Pocket Pages paper, it's quite handy that there's a journaling area for journaling all ready to go without me having to add a sticker or a layer or something that creates that. The sequins there that you saw me just placing around have got a really nice wood grain look to them. They look quite different to other sequins that I've used, but yet they've still got that, they just add interest, but if you look really closely they've got a wood grain which makes it even more interesting on the page. So adding on those sequins across the middle there beside the journaling, and done.